Good morning, Michael.
Hey, so welcome to podcast episode.
Yes, episode 25 for the week of January 17th.
Yes, this is Conscious Embodiment with Dr. Michael Lennox. I am your host, Dr. Michael Lennox. So is the producer and is here every week with us. We break down the week's astrology. We dive into dreams and dream interpretation, which we will do. It is a big week in the astrology. Man, there's a lot to unpack. And part of why that is Mercury has gone retrograde. Venus is retrograde. That means we have about 2 weeks of both Mercury and Venus retrograde. So mind is turned within, heart is turned within. We're bumping into the furniture. It could be a little challenging as a result. I will tell y'all, I absolutely underestimated the impact of Venus's retrograde. Underestimated it in this regard. I've been talking about all of the unconscious material that might have been revealed by Venus's backward motion, and especially because she's been hanging out so much with Pluto, the great transformative energy where we die and are reborn. So Venus backward moving means our heart centers are all in some discombobulated unconscious process. And because she sort of starts and ends her retrograde with Pluto, the transformer, what she's bringing us through emotionally is powerful, transformative, deep, because that's what Pluto brings to every interaction. So Mercury turned around at the end of last week, and we are now in a Mercury retrograde where he starts and ends his passage with a conjunction to Pluto. So mind is being transformed by the death rebirth planet at the same time. I could talk about the specifics of the timing of everything, but I think people would have aneurysms trying to follow the dates and the math. Just know this. Both the heart is being transformed and now the mind as well. And because it's happening at the same time, all of us are in a very individualized experience where we are going to be learning more about what is in our unconscious that inhibits our giving and receiving of love, and how we align our feelings and our thinking in a deserving sort of way. Mercury retrogrades always allow us to find how our thought patterns are holding us back, right? So there's great value to this process, but we're all on notice for this week and next week that all bets are off with regard to having this make sense or knowing what to happen next. You know, my ability to prepare you guys is really just to say, I have no idea how this is going to feel. Because I'm just another bozo on the bus, guys.
And you don't know their life.
Well, and I can tell you I'm in my own Venus retrograde that I wildly underestimated.
Yeah.
Like, I had Venus crossing my south node of the moon, which is the karmic point. And when she did that the first time, something kind of lovely happened that I assumed would deepen when she came by retrograde a week or so ago. And it just was the most painful little moment of karmic reckoning, right? So, yeah. So we're all in that. I mean, I share that with you guys to reflect that when personal planets turn around, the process is personally felt, which means you and you and you have one experience, you have a different one. The person in a relationship is going to have a different experience of Venus's retrograde than the person who wishes to be in a relationship and isn't, or whatever permutation you listeners have of where your heart is and where your thinking is all going to be transformed over the next couple of weeks. And then it's going to take a few months to wrap it all up as Venus finishes out her shadow, and so does Mercury in February. But the juicy, bumpy time of both mind and emotional body busy in the unconscious, which will leave us tripping around a bit, starts this week.
I had a really lovely conversation with someone last week, and I'm happy it happened during Venus retrograde, but right before Mercury retrograde to not, cross the communication strings. But I remember you saying that actually in the astrology of last week, that the conversations are coming up.
Yes. And they're going to combine.
Which is so interesting.
Yeah, they're going to combine. That is the need to process feelings, emotional responses, and relational stuff. And believe, when I say relational stuff, people also remember, I'm not just talking about romantic relationships. I'm talking about all your relating. All your relating is relating, right? So all of your relating is likely to need some communicative adjustments. So you make a good point, Zoe, that you sort of slid your important conversation in there before the general energy would reflect that a conversation you have might need a deeper reevaluation while Mercury is moving backward. But still, it'll be interesting for you, Zoe, to sort of just see over the next couple of weeks and months, how does that moment and event play out over these weeks? Because that is something I can say unequivocally, that anything that's coming up as we start this year off that is personal, emotional, relational, or key to how you think and feel in a kind of aligned sensibility is likely to come up in a manner demanding more attention and focus and revisiting over the next couple of weeks. Very few things will happen as a one and done. So just try to remember that as you approach any intimate, high stakes or low stakes experience of communicating your deeper feelings to those to whom it matters. Just a little nod to points after this week. Venus is retrograde till January 29th, and Mercury is retrograde till February 3rd. So this kind of double challenging heart-mind kerfuffle, really, you should just think of it as the whole rest of this month. So just be forewarned that all communication and all emotional high stakes could be a little juicier this week and next week. Of course, we'll talk more about that next week as well. In some ways, I may have buried the lead because we're in a full moon. The week starts out and the moon is full. So we are in the full moon in Cancer today, Monday the 17th. I did not lead with that because, frankly, I actually think it's much more important for all of us to be a little bit more aligned with what Mercury and Venus are doing. Well, just because it's an important process that we're in. And that really does want our greatest attention. But we are, in fact, in full moon moment. So we are in the Cancer full moon. So our conscious awareness is still in that Capricornian sense of what are my goals and ambitions? What mountain do I wish to climb in, the service of my life? That's what we're thinking about every Capricorn mansion as we begin every year in the West, where we follow the sun. So the Cancer archetype is the polar opposite of the desire or need to climb the mountain of our goals and ambitions. And Cancer is where we learn about care for self, nurturing, protection, the rest that's needed in order to climb the mountain again. You can have all the goals and ambitions you want, but if you don't periodically stop to take care of the mechanism that gets you up the mountain, you're going to get to the top of the mountain and be half dead because you didn't care for yourself along the way.
Yeah.
So this is one of those full moons that's very much about put your own oxygen mask on first.
It reminds me, there's a really popular video right now about girls who eat soup. And
say more.
I don't know. Okay, so soup to me feels so nurturing and warming and homebody, just like a Cancer.
Okay.
And so there's this funny video out there that's gorgeous, gorgeous girls love soup.
Well, listen, let's just take that image and say the Capricorn ascension of the mountain is the gorgeous girl piece of this symbolic, this image. And the soup is the Cancer archetype. It's like if you want to be gorgeous, meaning if you want to climb to the top of your own mountains, you need some soup along the way. And this is a moment to celebrate your wins around this. Remember, at every full moon, we want to practice gratitude. Gratitude for your family, gratitude for your home, gratitude for your extended family, if that's part of your story and the biological family isn't exactly your sort of place to go for nurturance. That's certainly a lot of people in my life operate in that way, because Cancer is the archetype of home, family. The literal home is a good place to focus attention in a ritualistic way when the full moon is in Cancer, because any attention you put into your home is reflective of attention you're giving yourself, because your home is an expression of self, just as, the body is. The home is the next layer of that same expression. So we want to make sure, like in every full moon, that a portion of how you attend to it is to lift up the winds, recognize the ways in which self-care is operating and how much it has offered you, to finally perhaps understand what it means to put your oxygen mask on first, and then take a look at anything and everything that you need to let go of, especially if it's around overambition, working too hard, not having balance. The Capricorn masculine drive energy, we can't function without it. But if we forget the caretaking along the way, that's something to take a deep look at during this full moon. It's time to let go of the notion of, I've got to work, I've got to work, I've got to work, I've got to work, I've got to keep going, because that mindset will, not be sustainable in the long run. And this is just that full moon to pay attention to that. The power of this full moon to truly help you transform ways in which you need to come into some more balance between your ambitions and your self-care is unprecedented. First of all, Pluto is in the house because the sun is exactly conjunct Pluto during this full moon. Now, one thing for sure I'll just throw in is that this is going to make the general amplification of energy that all full moons bring way more intense. Just because all full moons do rise up the intensity of just general sensibility of energy and how we feel. But the presence of Pluto with the sun makes the shadow much more available than it typically is. That's the power of the conscious awareness of the light of the sun at the same place with the planet that holds our deepest hidden places. Then we're in this extraordinary opportunity to see more deeply the wounds or the unconscious patterns that need or are ready to be let go of. And the fact that mind is turned within and heart is turned within by virtue of Venus and both Mercury being retrograde means that the prayers we say or the rituals we enact have greater power to help us transform that which we need to let go of at this time emotionally. And because Cancer is the moon sign that's most directly connected to our personal emotional experience, this is kind of an outrageous moment to marshal up what needs to be let go of in order for you to have a greater integration at this time. If you feel stuck around this, I'll offer up a little bit of a prayer. In this moment of profound transformation, I allow my vulnerabilities to open up. I drop easily into the most tender places in my psyche, releasing anything and everything, known, unknown, conscious and unconscious, that inhibit me from giving myself the greatest sense of love and care that I might need in order to climb the mountain of my own goals and ambitions. And so it is. Something happens tomorrow, right after the full moon, that is wildly significant in terms of the cycle we're going into with regard to conscious moving on the planet. The nodes of the moon are changing signs. This is a big sort of deal. It happens every 18 months, so it's not like a rare thing for the nodes to change signs, but it's really interesting that it's happening just as we're entering a new year, where the last 2 years, which was really the last sign that the nodes were in. In fact, the nodes changed signs right around when the pandemic started.
What sign was that? I'm curious.
Well, the North Node moved into Gemini, and the South Node moved into Sagittarius. Sagittarius.
Ooh, chaos.
Well, not only chaos, but polarization.
Right.
Because Gemini is about debate, divide. Now, in the best use of Gemini, this is where we get to have debate, have exchange, share ideas, look at the other side. We did not do a good job of that, did we?
No. I mean, not here in the United States of America.
And in fact, the South Node in Sagittarius is all about truth, right? Sagittarius invented that there's a higher truth. Only Sagittarius understands that there's one truth, that all truths lead to the same conclusion, that we live in existence and we're all part of that. Right? So religious ideology and polarization divide are a perfect shadow expression of South Node in Sagittarius, the past, what we're trying to move away from, and North Node in Gemini, we're trying to move toward equal exchange, the sharing of difference, and we didn't do a very good job.
And then this week we move into
Taurus, Scorpio. This is interesting.
Very different.
Very different energy. And Taurus is Venus ruled. Taurus is the sign where we landed in consciousness and said, wow, this place is kind of nice. There's beautiful things here. It's sensually delicious. There's contact, connection, and touch, and yummy. This body that I'm in feels so much pleasure. So there's great deal of yumminess in the Taurus archetype in that regard. But also Taurus is the sign that invented the earth herself. That we are here in the land of form is a Taurus consciousness. And because it's the sign, one of the signs ruled by Venus, it's about love. And so the direction ahead is toward more love. And the direction behind that which we are trying to move away from is the Scorpio mansion. Pluto's ruling sign, death, change, power struggles. So in this next 18-month process of the North Node of the Moon guiding us towards more love, and the South Node of the Moon saying, move away from death, move away from the shadow, move away from what you've learned in change and transformation, and let's try to move towards a more loving, rounded consciousness for the whole planet. And the nodes are collective. They represent the collective movement. Where is the whole world going? Right? And so in the idea that we didn't do a great job of honoring the moon in Gemini, we kind of got more divided. The calling for this year, I'll just leave it for 2022, is how do we move towards love and away from fear? I hope we do a better job of this nodal passage than we did of the last one.
If we could just do a fraction better, I think that would be great.
I agree with you there, Zoe, and also the idea that all we really need to do is snowball this thing. We need to attract more and more people to a higher path, to more love, to greater consciousness, because the more people on the planet who are operating in that way on their insides, that's when we can start seeing peace for humanity. And it happens one person at a time. 1 year at a time, if you will. If you did not check into my webinar forecast for 2022, the recording will be available through the end of the month, and I teach a little bit more about what the nodes of the moon are, what they represent, and what this year is going to sort of feel like a little bit with this nodal change. Check that out if you want more sort of astrological data about what the nodes are. But understand this, in this full moon, where we are examining how well we are taking care of ourselves in order to meet the road ahead, that it's the exact moment when the road ahead changes sensation. this is that moment. It's not a transit, so you're not going to feel it as an event. It's a passage. And it's a passage where we are really moving fully away from the changes that happened, the breakdowns that occurred in 2020 and 2021. That was the storm. And now, this week, we start the aftermath. We start to put shit back together. One last little segment for the astrology section of the podcast, and I think you're going to enjoy this one, Zoe, because aren't you an Aquarius sun?
I am. Yes,
It's your season!
I'm a February Aquarius, and we are headed into the season.
Well, happy almost birthday, Zoe. And yes, we start the Aquarius season on the 20th. So this week, we shift our consciousness away from the goals and the desires we have to, A, how do we serve the community? How do we open ourselves up to new and innovative, out-of-the-box notions of who we might be and what we might do next? I love that there's an elegant evolution of the zodiac, that as we come out of the consideration of what do I want to do, we move into the mansion of, I figured out what I want to do. How do I serve the community with what I want to do? Right? Because this is the beautiful archetype of the age of Aquarius. Most people don't know the origin story of Aquarius, and because he's called the water bearer, I often get confused questions. How is Aquarius an air sign if he's the water bearer?
Oh, yeah.
But this is actually a beautiful story. This is the only hero journey in the 12 origin stories of the sign. Aquarius recognized that something was missing because he had great intuition. So Aquarius is also the mansion where we invented intuition, synthesizing lots of information to figure out something new because you were able to put things together. That's intuition. And Aquarius, ruled by Uranus, innovative, high-level thinking, allows us to be intuitive because it has that very high-minded thought process that connects more to divine mind than personal mind. And it's the divine mind entered Aquarius's psyche and said, something's missing. And so Aquarius goes, all right, I don't know what's missing, but I'm going to go on a hero journey. I'm going to find water. And he brings water back to the community. Water sparks life. That's why he's the water bearer. But the important pieces of this origin story are the intuition that rises up first, that says something needs my attention. The willingness to go on the hero's journey is why the Aquarius archetype is known as the sort of unique individual self who doesn't conform to others. This is what allows that energy to say, I will leave the community. I am the outlier. I'm the one who should go investigating for the new thing because this mansion loves and thrives on the different, the unique, the unicorn in all of us, and the ability to be guided free from conformity. So for the next 4 weeks, starting on the 20th, we are in a different sensibility, and definitely be in curiosity about where your intuition is going to take you next. Mars changes signs on the 24th and moves into Capricorn, which will completely change how we make decisions and approach our actionable tasks. Mars is very much about how we choose, how we decide, how we take action. Now, I'll talk more deeply about this next week, and we'll go a little bit deeper in the next podcast. But understand that change happens just as the week is ending, and we move into next week, we will be in a completely different landscape about how we make choices and decisions.
All right, it's dream segment time. Every week, Dr. Michael will interpret dreams that are sent in via email or take a live caller. If you would like your dream interpreted on the podcast, you can go ahead and email us at dreams@michaellennox.com. Hopefully your dream will make it onto the show. This week we have a dream emailed in from Jenna. Jenna says, I wake up in the center of a large round pavilion made of stone, which has a stone fountain at the center. I can see the sunlight and rose gardens surrounding the structure. There's a rosary on the floor, missing its beads, and where the cross would be, there's a woman carved from bone. I'm supposed to meet my grandmother and aunt, who have both been dead for 15 years. But in the dream, they play a joke on me and are alive. I'm full of grief, but also very calm. Then I hear a white-throated sparrow, and I realize they're not coming, but they are actually really dead. The rose gardens are peaceful, but I do not enter them, and I can't get off the stone floor. I stay in the dark structure, listening to the sparrow and the sound of the fountain, staring at the beadless rosary, and begin to understand it was a gift from a goddess I did not care for properly. The missing beads are my fault, and I am supposed to restore it. I don't know how, because I can't move my body.
It's actually a gorgeous dream. I love dreams that are so clearly some form of ritual. And this has got to be that, because think about it, Zoe. Most dreams are wildly chaotic.
Right, and this was super peaceful.
Well, yes, peaceful, but mostly singular in setting.
Oh, right.
That's what sets it apart.
Right, a lot of people are jumping around
all over. In fact, when someone says, oh, is this dream a visitation? It's like, well, where did it take place? And if it took place at the carnival and then the slide and then, you had ice cream, it's like, no, that's a dream. But anything that's as singular as the setting of this dream, I think we're in something other. Like we're in a level of dreaming that is more multidimensional and connected to a woo-woo perspective of when we are in dreams, we are connected or able to connect to our divine consciousness. And this feels like that. The round pavilion suggests a temple that is made of stone, has a sense of ancientness. We know a stone is coming from the bowels of the mother herself, right? Stone also is a symbol of memory. Fossil records, previous stone on the earth tells us the history of the earth. So stone says, I was here before life and consciousness. So that starting image just tells us we're in some kind of sacred moment. The sunlight in the rose gardens, blah, blah, blah. We don't need to, it's a lovely day because it's a lovely setting.
Right.
And certainly we can interpret sunlight as consciousness. And rose gardens are about the cultivation of love. A rose is a great symbol for the heart chakra, and a rose garden says love grows here. So we're in a sacred temple, light of consciousness, lots of love. And a rosary on the floor is not being used. It's not being cared for. And it's Catholic, right? There are no goddesses in Catholicism. Catholicism says we give up those feminine principled, juicy, divine archetypes, and we replace it with Mother Mary. So we have one archetype in Catholicism that says the feminine principle only offers care, compassion, and forgiveness, when the feminine principle is also filled with juicy, destructive, creative stuff, all kinds of rich feminine aspects of the divine that you could only have when you have like a panoply of goddesses, not a Catholic sensibility of male patriarchal God, and the only thing the feminine principle is good for is compassion and forgiveness. So part of what's happening is the veil between life and death is opened up because we have all of these people who have passed, they're visiting. And there's like a joke, right, that they are alive. This, to me, says that we are in consideration of death after a separation, just a sort of a new relationship. The Catholic perspective would be death is the end. It's a separation. You go to heaven. You leave this earthly plane. But that's not the modern spiritual sensibility that is much more whole and complete, where we honor the feminine consciousness and the ways in which that power is available to us, not just the limited perspective of what Catholicism offers us. So once you're filled with grief and calmness, there is a sense that I am in this body where loss and grief is part of it because of this thing called death. whereas the Catholic consciousness says they are gone. This other perspective says you are not separated from them. The message that you are never separate from love, though the form may change through death, is a message being told to Jenna through the sparrow. All bird medicine is about messages or information. They fly around in the air, which is akin to the intellect. So they symbolically represent new ideas. And there's this beautiful song about love and grief and that we are never separated. So what she comes to is, I can't leave yet. I am in a process. I have to write something. I might have abandoned my connection to the divine feminine principle because I was indoctrinated into the binary of Catholicism. And who knows, she fixes it. I say the dream is the fix. It is the sense of, I am re-meeting and integrating my connection to a much more powerful sense of who I am multidimensionally. And I am not done, so I need to sit here until I figure it out. Great dream.
Similar announcements to last week. You know, you mentioned it. If you missed the Astrological Overview for 2022, you can still purchase and download that on the website, michaellennox.com. He takes some of the themes we touched on today and goes much deeper because it's a full 2-hour webinar.
Yeah, very comprehensive. I had a blast. I have my first class of the year. I'm starting the year with Jumpstart Your Spiritual Practice. It's going to start this Saturday, 4 Saturdays at 11 a.m. Pacific time. You don't have to be there present live to take advantage of the class. Recordings are great, and people work with the recordings a lot in my classes. And this is one of my most favorite classes to teach, and it just allows us all to go into all of the things that I know about practice, from breath work to meditation to prayer, techniques, all kinds of stuff, and do it in community to start the year off getting your spiritual practice sort of jump-started.
You don't say. So that is also available for purchase on michaellennox.com. And it has a lot of more information if you want to know exactly what's going to happen. So check it out. Thank you for listening to Conscious Embodiment, Astrology and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox. You can find us on Apple Music, the iHeartRadio app, and anywhere you find your favorite shows. Head on over to michaellennox.com for information on astrology readings, the daily Astro Alert subscription, upcoming classes, and to join the mailing list.